The camera never lied. That's what Adaeze Okafor's journalism professor had told her 7 years ago at the University of Lagos, back when she still believed in truth, justice, and the power of a single photograph to change the world. Back before she understood that truth could get you killed. Tonight, the truth was about to get her married. Ada crouched in the shadows of Warehouse 7 at Busan Port, her Nikon D850 pressed against her face like a shield. The assignment was supposed to be simple. Photograph labor violations at the docks for a human rights organization that paid in cash and didn't ask about visa status. 3 hours of work, $500,000 in her pocket, enough to send to Mama for this month's chemotherapy. Simple, safe, survivable. But then she'd heard the screams. Through her telephoto lens, she watched as 5 men in expensive suits dragged a 6th man, bound, gagged, covered in blood, into the center of the empty warehouse. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed like dying insects, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. "Please!" The bound man's voice was muffled by the gag, but Ada could read the word on his lips. "Please, boss, I can explain." He was tall, easily 6 feet, with the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers, not in blood-splattered warehouses, sharp jawline that could cut glass, eyes so dark they looked black even under the harsh lights, perfectly styled hair that probably cost more than her entire month's rent, and a Brioni suit in charcoal gray that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. But it was his hands that made her stomach drop. They were steady. Completely, absolutely steady as he pulled a Glock 19 from his shoulder holster and checked the chamber with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. "Park Jin-ho." His voice was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that ordered expensive wine at restaurants, not executions at midnight. "You stole from me $3 million from the shipment last week. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" But some instinct, the same instinct that had made her a good journalist in Lagos, the same instinct that had nearly gotten her killed, kept her finger on the shutter button. Click, click, click. "So I asked myself," the suited man continued, "where did Park Jin-ho get the money for Yale tuition? And then I looked at my books, and there it was, $3 million, gone. And your daughter, coincidentally, enrolled 2 weeks later." Ada's camera captured the moment in perfect clarity, the bound man's eyes widening in terror, the fluorescent light reflecting off the barrel of the Glock, the absolute absence of emotion on the suited man's face. "For the record," the suited man said, "I'm not a monster. Your daughter will receive a check every month to continue her studies. She'll think it's from a scholarship fund. And she'll never know that her father died because he was too greedy to understand the only rule that matters in my world." Ada flinched, her camera slipping slightly, but her finger stayed on the shutter button. Professional instinct. Stupid, dangerous, potentially fatal instinct. Click, click, click. The bound man, Park Jin-ho, crumpled to the ground. Blood pooled around his head, dark and viscous under the fluorescent lights. The other suited men didn't even flinch. They'd seen this before. They'd probably done this before. But Kang Minho, that name. She'd remember that name. Holstered his weapon and pulled a white handkerchief from his pocket. He wiped his hands carefully, methodically, like he was cleaning up after dinner rather than murder. "Dispose of the body," he told his men. "The usual place, and send the first check to the daughter tomorrow. Yale's spring tuition is due next week." She'd been backing away slowly, trying to retreat into the shadows, trying to become invisible. But her foot caught on a loose bolt, and she stumbled. The Nikon, her most precious possession, the tool that had fed her for 6 years, slipped from her hands and hit the concrete with a sickening crack. The sound echoed through the warehouse like a second gunshot. 5 pairs of eyes turned toward her hiding spot, and Kang Minho's hand went back to his holster. "Come out." His voice was still calm, still smooth, like he was inviting her to tea, not potential execution. "Slowly, hands where I can see them." The fluorescent lights hit her full force, and she had to squint against the brightness. But she kept her chin up, kept her eyes on Kang Minho, kept breathing even though her lungs felt like they were full of concrete. "Well," Kang Minho's eyes traveled over her slowly, cataloging every detail. "This is unexpected. I was here for a job. Labor violations, nothing to do with this." Those pictures would have been very high quality, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and understated, cedar and bergamot. You saw my face. You heard my name. And judging by the number of shutter clicks I heard, you took approximately 15 photographs documenting the entire event. She'd seen bodies dumped in lagoons. She knew exactly what men like this did to witnesses. Please. The word came out as a whisper. I have a mother. She's sick. She needs me. I'll give you the memory card. I'll leave Korea. I'll never come back. Just please don't. Is that what you think I'm going to do? Beg for mercy while lying about their intentions. You're a photographer working cash jobs, which means you're either in debt or sending money home or both. And you're in a warehouse at Busan Port at midnight, which means you're desperate enough to take risks that could get you killed. You choose, and we both walk away from this warehouse alive. When he looked at her again, his expression was completely unreadable. Option 1, he said. I kill you right now. Clean shot. No suffering. I'll make sure your mother receives money every month for her medical treatment. She'll think it's from a charity. She'll never know what happened to you. Option 2, he continued. You marry me. Tonight. Right here. Legal contract. Legitimate papers. All very official. You become my wife in every legal sense. Your visa problems disappear. Your mother gets the best cancer treatment money can buy. And you live. Because in my world, witnesses die. Always. Without exception. But I'm not in the habit of killing women who remind me of... She'd always been behind the camera. Watching. Documenting. Bearing witness. Now she was the witness. And the witness was being given a choice between death and marriage to a murderer. If I marry you, she said slowly, what would that actually mean? What would you expect from me? You'll present the image of a respectable marriage to the public, and in exchange, you live, your mother lives, and you never have to work another illegal job in your life. Ada thought about Mama in Lagos, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily, predictably, expensively. Thought about the medical bills piling up, the desperate phone calls, the way Mama's voice had sounded last week when she said, Don't worry about me, Ada. You focus on staying safe. Thought about the death threats, the midnight escape, the 6 years of living in limbo in Seoul. Thought about survival, the thing she'd always been good at. I have conditions, she said. Kang Minho's eyebrows rose slightly. You have conditions? A real smile this time, not the terrifying one from before. You're either very brave or very stupid, he said. I haven't decided which. Whatever it takes. I would never... He stopped, started again. That's not the kind of man I am. With enough money to start over somewhere safe. Deal, he said. You have my word. All 4 conditions. But in exchange, you have to give me something too. And I can't protect you from everyone. The expired visa, the desperate jobs, the endless struggle to survive in a country that didn't want her. And now this, a choice between death and marriage to a stranger, a murderer, a man whose eyes held secrets and scars, and something that looked dangerously close to loneliness. You're insane, she said. Probably. He kept his hand extended. But you're still alive. So maybe insanity has its advantages. His grip was firm but not painful. And something passed between them in that moment. A current, a recognition, a sense of stepping off a cliff into the unknown. Adaeze Okafor, he said formally, you just became the future Mrs. Kang Minho. Welcome to the family. Then he saw Ada and his eyes widened. Is this... Yes, boss, I'll make the calls. Trust, remember? His voice was gentle but firm. You promised. Destroy everything I've built. Because the moment you think you understand me, one of us becomes predictable. And predictable people don't survive in my world. And make sure the daughter's check arrives on time. Whatever you were before you walked into this warehouse, that person doesn't exist anymore. Looked at the way his jaw tightened when he mentioned his enemies. The way his fingers had trembled, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, when she'd mentioned freedom. She thought about her journalism professor, about how the camera never lied, and she wondered what story was hidden in Kang Minho's eyes. What truth he was hiding behind all that beautiful, terrifying control. "Just one question," she said. "What? Who?" "And I passed the test." "Then we're both survivors," she said. "Both damaged. Both trying to protect the people we love from a world that wants to destroy them. And now I'm about to become something I never expected to be." He released her hand and offered his arm instead. Formal, almost courtly. "Shall we?" he asked. "We have a wedding to attend." "Let's go get married," she said. They walked out of Warehouse 7 together. The murderer and the witness, the predator and the photographer, two damaged people about to forge a bond that neither of them understood, but both of them needed. Behind them, Park Jin-ho's body was already being loaded into an unmarked van. The blood was being scrubbed from the concrete. The evidence was disappearing. But Ada had her camera, had her memory card, had her proof, and Kang Minho had given it to her willingly. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single act, that moment of trust in a warehouse full of death, was going to change everything. The witness had become the bride, and nothing would ever be the same. Judge Kim lived in a hanok in Busan, one of those traditional Korean houses that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, nestled between modern high-rises like a relic from another era. It was 2 a.m. when Kang Minho's black Mercedes pulled up to the ornate wooden gate. Ada sat in the back seat, her cracked camera clutched against her chest like armor. She hadn't said a word during the 40-minute drive from Busan to Seoul. Neither had Minho, though she'd felt his gaze on her more than once, assessing, calculating, trying to figure out what he'd just agreed to. Sung-ho opened her door from outside. "Mrs. Kang," he said, then caught himself. "My apologies. Soon to be Mrs. Kang, because he knows what happens to people who refuse me." She took it, and together they walked through the gate into a courtyard that smelled like pine and jasmine, and the end of her old life. Judge Kim was 70 years old, with silver hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades of seeing the worst of humanity and trying to find justice anyway. He wore a traditional hanbok despite the late hour, and his hands trembled slightly as he arranged papers on a low wooden table. "This is highly irregular," he said without looking at Minho. "A marriage license at 2 a.m. No witnesses except your guard. No family present. And the bride." He finally looked at Ada, and his expression softened with something like pity. "Does she even speak Korean?" "Your accent is very good." About the death threats from Lagos that still sometimes found their way to her email. About the way Minho had given her back the memory card, the insurance policy, the power. "Yes," she said. "I want to marry him. I'll need your identification documents, both of you." And now he was being forced to participate in what was essentially a hostage situation. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Judge Kim looked up. "For what?" "And I have absolutely no idea about yours." He looked between her and Minho. "Which means it will either be the greatest love story I've ever witnessed or the most spectacular disaster. Possibly both. You own half the judges in Seoul, and you've made it clear what happens to the ones who don't cooperate. But I'm also doing this because I looked at this woman's visa records. She's 3 weeks from deportation, and I've seen what happens to investigative journalists who go back to Lagos after exposing corruption. Once you sign this document, you have the same legal rights as any Korean spouse. You can own property, you can file for divorce, you can press charges for domestic abuse. If something were to happen to your husband, you would become one of the wealthiest women in Korea. Let's make this official before I lose my nerve entirely." Minho must have felt it, because he leaned close and whispered, "Permission, remember? I don't have yours." He'd felt it too, that impossible spark, that recognition of something neither of them had been looking for. Minho released her hand quickly, like he'd been burned. "Congratulations," Judge Kim said, though he sounded like he was offering condolences. "You're legally married, Mrs. Kang Adaeze. May God have mercy on both of you." She was married. To a man who'd killed someone in front of her 3 hours ago. To a stranger with secrets and scars and eyes that held too much pain. "We're going to my apartment," Minho said, breaking the silence. "Gangnam, penthouse, it's secure. Your mother will be transferred to Seoul National University Hospital tomorrow morning. First-class treatment, private room, whatever she needs. But it's effective." Word spreads fast in my world. A kitchen that looked like it had never been used. And everywhere, the sense of space, emptiness, a home that had never actually been lived in. Guest room is down that hallway, Minho said, shrugging off his jacket. There was blood on his shirt cuff. Park Jin-ho's blood, Ada realized with a sickening jolt. Bathroom attached. Closet is empty, but we'll get you clothes tomorrow. Is there anything you need tonight? My brother's name was Kang Ji-hoon, he said to the window, not looking at her. He was 3 years younger than me. Kind, gentle, everything I wasn't, everything our father hated. Kill Ji-hoon or I would kill both of us. And I've been living with the knowledge that I murdered my own brother for an empire I never wanted. Refused to be afraid even when he should have been. That's the most fucked up reason for marriage I've ever heard, she said. Probably. And because if we're going to survive this, if you're going to survive being married to me, you need to understand what you're dealing with. In every way that matters. A man who's been punishing himself for 13 years for a crime he was forced to commit. Don't, he said roughly. Don't try to save me. Don't try to find the good in me. I'm exactly what I appear to be, a killer in an expensive suit. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Understanding what I'm looking at is what I do. When the honeymoon period of survival wears off and you realize you're married to a monster. I'm just telling you what I've learned in 6 years of survival. The people who seem like monsters usually have the best reasons. And the people who seem like saints are usually hiding the worst secrets. Like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, an equation that didn't balance. You're insane, he said. You married me. Ada started walking toward the guest room hallway. So what does that make you? For being brave enough to survive this. Let herself process. Let herself feel the full weight of what she'd just done. She was married. To a killer, who looked at her like she was both his salvation and his damnation, who'd given her power over him and then dared her to use it, who was so desperately, achingly lonely that he'd married a stranger rather than kill another person who reminded him of his murdered brother. Ada pulled out her camera and scrolled through the photos from the warehouse. Park Jin-ho pleading, Minho's finger on the trigger, the moment of execution, frozen forever in 45.7 megapixels of crystal clarity, evidence, insurance, power, but also something else, a record of the moment her life had fractured into before and after. Before Kang Minho, after Kang Minho, before survival had a price tag, after she'd agreed to pay it. She ejected the memory card and hid it in her camera bag, then collapsed onto the bed, a bed that probably cost more than her annual salary, in a room owned by a man who'd killed 48 people. 48, she corrected herself, not 47 anymore. In a marriage that was either the smartest or stupidest decision she'd ever made. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Lee Sung-min, head of oncology, will be her primary physician. He's the best in Asia. She'll receive the treatment she needs. Sung-ho. And never told her. Couldn't have told her because he didn't know her 3 years ago. So who had it been for? Another ghost, probably. Another person he'd lost or failed or killed. Ada typed back, "Thank you. Tell him I'll check it out tomorrow." She set the phone down, turned off the lights, and lay in the darkness listening to the sounds of Seoul filtering through the expensive windows. Somewhere in this penthouse, Kang Minho was probably also lying awake, thinking about his brother, his choices, the witness he'd married instead of killed, and Ada thought about her father, her own ghosts, the corruption that had driven her from Lagos to Seoul to a warehouse at midnight where her life had irrevocably changed. She thought about Judge Kim's words, greatest love story, or most spectacular disaster. She thought about the way Minho's lips had felt against her knuckles, the electricity, the recognition, and she wondered, not for the first time and definitely not for the last, if she'd just made a deal with the devil or found an unexpected ally in the darkness. Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. Adaeze Okafor was no longer the person who'd walked into that warehouse with a camera and a desperate need for cash. She was Mrs. Kang Minho now, the witness bride, and their story was only beginning. 3 weeks later, Ada woke to screaming. She bolted upright in bed, heart pounding, reaching automatically for the camera she kept on the nightstand. The screaming continued, raw, anguished, the sound of someone reliving their worst nightmare. It was coming from Minho's room. Ada hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. Then she was up, running down the hallway, not caring that she was only wearing an oversized t-shirt, not caring about boundaries or privacy or the careful distance they'd maintained since the wedding. She burst through his door without knocking. Minho was on the bed, tangled in expensive sheets, thrashing like he was fighting an invisible enemy. His eyes were closed, his face contorted in agony, and he was saying something over and over in Korean. A name, she realized. Jihoon, Jihoon. His hand loosened but didn't release. Ada! His voice was wrecked. What? Why are you? Go back to bed. And every morning I wake up and remember it wasn't a dream. Send her away. Retreat back into his carefully constructed walls. Instead, he took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses. His grip was gentle despite the strength she could feel there. And when he stood, she realized how tall he was, at least 6 inches taller than her, broad-shouldered and muscular under the scars, dangerous, damaged, and desperately in need of something he couldn't name. They walked to the kitchen together, hand in hand, husband and wife in the most unconventional sense. And as Ada put water on to boil, she made a decision. She was going to stay. Not just for survival, not just for Mama's medical bills, but because Kang Minho needed someone who wasn't afraid of his ghosts, and she needed someone who understood that sometimes survival meant making impossible choices. They were perfect for each other, in the most broken, dangerous way possible. And their story, the story of the witness bride, was about to get a lot more complicated. The dark room on the roof became Ada's sanctuary. For 2 months, she'd photographed Seoul from every angle. Street vendors in Myeongdong, fishermen at dawn in Noryangjin, children playing in Hangang Park. Normal life, beautiful life, life that had nothing to do with warehouses and blood and the weight of a platinum ring on her finger. She was developing prints when Sung-ho found her. Mrs. Kang. He stood in the doorway, backlit by afternoon sun. There's a situation. All the major families. It's a test, Mrs. Kang. Of you. Of the marriage. Of whether you're a weakness or an asset. Runs the family now. Ada stared at it hanging in her closet. Her closet now, after 2 months of slowly claiming space in the penthouse, and wondered who had taken her measurements without her knowing. She was still staring when Minho appeared in her doorway. You don't have to go, he said without preamble. I can make an excuse. Say you're sick. But I'm still giving you a choice. He leaned against the door frame, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. My uncle is dangerous. More dangerous than me in some ways. He doesn't kill people himself anymore. He just arranges circumstances where they destroy themselves. The Kang family specializes in impossible choices. Make you a weapon aimed at my throat. Minho's voice was quiet but intense. That's how he operates. He doesn't eliminate threats. He converts them. We're born knowing how to navigate battlefields. She'd heard rumors about Yeon-joo over the past 2 months. The daughter of a chaebol family, groomed from birth to marry into the Kang clan, publicly humiliated when Minho broke the engagement to marry a Nigerian photographer instead. Let me guess, Ada said. She hates me. Against us. She admired you for murdering your brother. And she spent the last 5 years plotting revenge. Faced the whole damn family. How you work. Just fingertips against her cheekbone. Feather light. Asking permission. She didn't pull away. We should get ready, he said, his voice rough. The dinner starts at 8. The Kang family estate was in Pyeongchang-dong, where old money lived behind high walls and higher expectations. The mansion sprawled across 5 acres of manicured gardens, traditional architecture mixed with modern security systems. Ada counted 7 guards at the front gate alone. Stay close to me, Minho said as they walked through the entrance. His hand was at the small of her back, possessive, protective. Don't engage with anyone unless I'm beside you. And if Yeon-joo says something designed to provoke you, I saw you kill. That makes me dangerous by association. Judging the Nigerian woman who'd somehow infiltrated one of Korea's most powerful crime families. She kept her spine straight and her expression serene. Let them look. Let them judge. She'd survived worse. Minho-ya, a woman's voice, sharp with false warmth. You finally decided to join us. Designer dress that probably cost more than Ada's annual salary, jewelry that could fund a small hospital, and eyes that promised violence wrapped in silk. Yeon-joo, Minho's voice was carefully neutral. Thank you for attending. Of course they knew. Someone had talked. Someone always talked. Adaeze Kang. Ada extended her hand, refusing to be intimidated. Pleased to meet you. Some are just more honest about it than others. Careful, Yeon-joo said softly. You might have fooled Minho with your victim act, but the rest of us see through it. You're a gold digger who got lucky. Nothing more. Enough. Fascinating. The blood on these walls? The bodies buried in these gardens? And because killing another person who didn't deserve it would have made me too much like my father. Why now? About what kind of man I want to be. I want to hear more about the photographer who married my nephew. She seems entertaining. Definitely both. Moments that tell stories. People who deserve to be seen. If I only photographed beautiful things, I'd be lying about the world. I'd hate to be predictable. Ada. The way she said the name made it sound like an insult. I have to know. When you saw Minho kill that man, Park Jin-ho, wasn't it? What did you feel? Ada set down her chopsticks and looked directly at Yeon-joo. I felt terrified, she said honestly. I felt like I was watching someone's entire world end in a single moment. And I felt grateful. That told me something important about the man I was about to marry. When you understand the extent of the blood on his hands, which means I have legal rights, property rights, inheritance rights. She paused, letting that sink in. Judge Kim made sure I understood that before I signed the papers, so if I'm a prisoner, I'm a remarkably well-protected one. Naive, thinking you can change a man like Minho? But her heart was pounding, her hands shaking slightly under the table. Minho's thumb traced circles on her palm. Soothing, grateful, amazed. When dessert was finally served, some elaborate French confection that Ada barely tasted, Chairman Kang stood. A toast, he said, raising his glass. To my nephew Minho and his unexpected bride. May your marriage be as interesting as it is unconventional. Even Yeon-joo, though her expression promised poison. To the witness bride, Chairman Kang continued, looking directly at Ada, who has proven herself tonight to be far more than a simple photographer. Welcome to the family, Adaeze Kang. I look forward to seeing what you do next. I suspect you will. The car slid through Seoul's night streets, passing from old money neighborhoods to modern high-rises. He trained me, Minho said finally. From age 6, how to fight, how to kill, how to control every emotion until I became a perfect weapon. His voice was flat. He used to test me, bring in prisoners, make me hurt them. If I hesitated, if I showed mercy, he'd hurt them worse to prove a point. In my room, covered in someone else's blood, trying to figure out how to be human again, he'd talk to me, read to me, remind me that I was still his brother, not just a weapon. Remember you were human once. At least then Jaehoon wouldn't have died knowing I was the one who pulled the trigger. Like giving me the memory card, like choosing to question instead of just survive. Not just for survival, but because you needed someone who wasn't afraid of your ghosts. I wanted to expose the truth. Force people to see what they wanted to ignore. Ada's voice was thick with old pain. But in Lagos, the truth just got more people killed. So I ran, came here, started over, and for 6 years I told myself I was surviving. But really, I was just hiding. Who knows what it feels like to carry blood on your hands? She leaned her forehead against his. We're both haunted, Minho. Both broken. But maybe broken people can help each other heal. Felt his hands in her hair, her hands gripping his jacket. Two damaged people trying to find something whole in each other. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. I don't know how to do this, Minho said. How to be a husband. How to love someone without destroying them. A business arrangement. From fake marriage to something real. From survival partnership to actual intimacy. And neither of them knew what came next. But as they entered the penthouse together, Ada felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. Hope. Maybe this was insane. Maybe they were both delusional. Maybe the witness bride and the killer husband were doomed from the start. Or maybe, just maybe, two broken people could build something beautiful from the wreckage. She was willing to find out. The photographs arrived 3 days later. Ada found the envelope slipped under their apartment door. Thick, expensive paper, no return address. Just her name written in elegant calligraphy. Mrs. Kang Adaeze. She knew immediately it was a threat. Inside, 20 photographs. Professional quality. Taken over the past 2 months. Ada leaving the hospital where Mama was being treated. Ada at a cafe in Itaewon. Ada in the dark room. Ada and Minho leaving the family estate after the dinner. And on every single photograph, a red X marked through her face. The message was clear. I'm watching. I can reach you anywhere. You're already dead. Ada's hands shook as she spread the photos across the kitchen counter. Someone had been following her for 2 months, documenting her movements, planning something. Minho, she called toward his office. We have a problem. Professional surveillance, expensive photography, delivered to send a message. Somewhere Yeon-joo can't find you while I deal with this. Faster, more prepared. But that's not who I am. But you married me anyway. It's time you understood what you're really fighting for. Minho led her up a winding path to a simple headstone, black granite with gold lettering. Kang Ji-hoon, 1989, 2012. Remember me as I was, not as I died. And every week I try to figure out what to say. Said I needed to internalize the lesson. Understand that love was weakness. Family was expendable. Only power mattered. And I realized that my father was wrong. Love wasn't weakness. Love was the only thing that made us human. Ji-hoon's love for me, my love for him, that was the only real thing in a world built on lies. Because I wanted him to die knowing someone who loved him was the last thing he saw. Not with grand gestures, but by showing her his deepest wound and trusting her not to make it worse. Listen to me, Ada said firmly. I'm not Ji-hoon. I'm not helpless. I'm not going to die because you love me. Not because of threats. Not because of fear. Not because loving you is dangerous. That's what marriage means, remember? Fighting impossible battles side by side. They were driving back to Seoul, had just merged onto the highway, when the black SUV appeared behind them, following too close, too aggressive. Minho. Ada's voice was tight. Someone's tailing us. His hand went to the compartment between the seats, pulled out a Glock. Ada, I need you to get down, under the dashboard, now. The sedan on their left was shooting now too, bullets punching through metal and glass. Stay down, Minho shouted. He was driving like a man possessed, cutting across 3 lanes, using other cars as shields, returning fire whenever he had a clear shot. Ada curled into a ball, her hands over her head, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. This was different from Lagos. Different from passive observation. This was being inside the violence, being the target. The Mercedes took a hard turn. Tires screamed. More gunfire. And then, impact. The sedan had rammed them from the side. The Mercedes spun, hit the highway barrier, metal shrieking against concrete. Everything went silent for a moment. Then Minho was pulling her up, checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? Just shoot. Minho caught him, slammed him against the SUV, put the gun under his chin. Who sent you? Minho's voice carried across the highway. Tell me now and I make it quick. He walked back to the Mercedes, covered in someone else's blood, his expression hard and cold and utterly focused. We need to move, he said. Police will be here in minutes. Can you walk? The safe house was in Hongdae, buried in a maze of student apartments and all-night cafes where no one paid attention to anyone else. Minho had called Sung-ho from a burner phone, arranged for pickup, for cleanup, for all the invisible machinery that made bodies and evidence disappear. Now they sat in a cramped studio apartment, both of them shaking, both of them processing what had just happened. I'm sorry, Minho's voice was hoarse. I should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better. Because you did what you had to do? The law called it murder. But I knew the truth. Sometimes killing is the only language violence understands. Monsters don't protect strangers' daughters or give witnesses the power to destroy them. God help me, I love you. And that terrifies me more than anything Yeon-joo could do. And I couldn't bear the thought of losing you, too. And I don't give up on people I love. Every face, every name, every connection. More than that. Ada zoomed in on the background. Look at what Yeon-joo is holding. Someone who knew where to look. Okay, he said finally. If she wants to play with evidence, we'll play, but we'll play smarter. You're not the only one who's been documenting everything. To stand beside me in public and declare war on the most powerful people in Korea? And who she was now. A witness bride who refused to be silenced. I'm ready, she said. Let's end this. And the war was about to begin. The Seoul Cultural Center glittered like a diamond in the heart of Gangnam. Every powerful family in Korea was there. Politicians, business magnates, and the criminal elite who controlled the shadows behind them. The annual Winter Gala was ostensibly a charity event, raising money for orphanages and hospitals. In reality, it was a display of power, a chance for the families to show strength, forge alliances, and destroy enemies with a smile and a champagne flute. Ada stood in front of the mirror in their hotel room, smoothing down the red dress Minho had chosen. Valentino, custom-fitted, the color of blood and war. You look beautiful, Minho said from behind her. He was in a tuxedo, black and sharp and devastating. And terrifying. All the evidence against everyone. But I believe it anyway. And everywhere. The subtle dance of power. Alliances being negotiated, threats being delivered with smiles, futures being decided over canapes and champagne. There. Minho nodded toward the far end of the room. Choi Yeon-joo stood surrounded by admirers, wearing white, a direct challenge to Ada's red. Her smile was vicious as she spotted them. Showtime, Ada murmured. They made their entrance slowly, deliberately. Every eye in the room tracked their progress. The whispers started immediately. That's her, the witness bride. Unpleasantness. This is a charity gala, after all. It would be unseemly to air family business in public. He's probably planned 3 contingencies for every move we make. But we planned for that, too. Various family heads praising the charity work, announcing donations, performing the theater of benevolence while everyone knew the money came from blood and corruption. Then Yeon-joo took the stage. Thank you all for coming tonight, she said, her voice carrying perfectly through the sound system. I'm honored to announce a special donation from the Choi family, 50 billion won to support orphaned children. But I also want to talk about responsibility, Yeon-joo continued, about the duty we have as powerful families to ensure our children are protected, to make sure that violence doesn't touch the innocent. Might be putting innocent people in danger. Just summary execution. What kind of family allows a witness to a murder to become part of their inner circle? And what does it say about the Kang family that they would rather buy silence than seek justice? You're right, he said into the microphone. I did kill Park Jin-ho, and my wife did photograph it. So let me tell you the rest of the story. So yes, I executed him for stealing from me, but I also made sure his daughter could finish her education. Every month for the past 2 months, she's received a scholarship check from me. This is proof that even when I take a life, I try to protect the innocent, because she looked at me after watching me kill a man, and instead of begging for mercy, she negotiated. She set terms. She demanded respect. And I realized that anyone brave enough to do that deserved my protection, my loyalty, my love. And I'll be damned if I let anyone, including you, Yeon-joo, destroy what we've built. Documents visible. Contracts for weapons smuggling, human trafficking, money laundering. These were taken over the past 5 years, Minho said, documenting your family's illegal operations, the ones you've been conducting behind your father's back. The ones that would get you arrested for treason if the government knew about them. And I'll turn over these photos of you. We can both go down, or... Well played, he said, rising from his seat. Both of you. A perfect demonstration of mutually assured destruction. The foundation of all successful negotiations. That I'll allow my nephew and my potential daughter-in-law to hold weapons over each other indefinitely by giving her power over you. The moment everything ended or everything changed, then Sung-ho's voice cut through the chaos. Sir, you need to see this. Prove your loyalty. Prove you're worthy of inheriting. And it showed one more thing, the chairman loading the gun beforehand, making sure it was Minho's fingerprints on the weapon, guaranteeing that Minho would be bound by guilt and blood to the family forever. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Chairman Kang's face went white. Where did you get that? I'm sorry, boss. I should have shown you this years ago, but I was afraid the truth would destroy you. Everything you are, everything you have, it's because of me. And you're going to disappear from my life forever. And these photos will go to every news organization in Korea, every international media outlet, every prosecutor who's ever wanted to bring down the Kang family. You wouldn't dare. Set both pieces on the floor. You're done controlling me. Done controlling this family. Sung-ho, call the prosecutors. Tell them Chairman Kang Young-soo is ready to confess to conspiracy to commit murder, along with 13 years of documented crimes. Willing to sacrifice family for power. Legitimate businesses will continue. Criminal enterprises end tonight. That's exactly what we're doing. My wife is the most dangerous person in this room. Not because she's violent, but because she has principles. And principles are harder to fight than guns. And as they exited the Seoul Cultural Center into the cold December night, Ada felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. Freedom. Real, absolute, terrifying freedom. Where do we go now? She asked. Minho pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. Anywhere. Everywhere. It doesn't matter. As long as we're together. The witness bride taught me well. The sign above the door read, Witness Gallery in both Korean and English, with a tagline underneath, Truth Through the Lens. Ada stood in the main exhibition space, making final adjustments to the photographs on the walls. Her photographs. 6 months of work documenting Seoul's invisible people, the migrant workers, the elderly living alone, the street vendors who kept the city running while remaining unseen. This one is my favorite. The cancer was in remission. Mama had color in her cheeks, life in her eyes. She'd moved to Seoul 2 months ago, after Ada and Minho had insisted. Now she lived in a comfortable apartment in Itaewon, close enough to visit, but with her own independence. How are you feeling today? Ada asked. Strong. Mama squeezed her hand. Thanks to your husband, and to you, for being brave enough to survive. You learned how to survive from me, but you learned how to live from him, from love. That's a different lesson entirely. Are you nervous? That's everything. But he'd survived. They'd survived. Have you checked the news this morning? Sung-ho asked carefully. No. Ada's stomach tightened. Should I be worried? The evidence Minho provided. Her own family members testifying against her to reduce their sentences. She's done. I denied the request. About moving forward, not looking back. Stage 4 cancer, has maybe 6 months. That only someone still capable of love could choose what I chose. Jihoon would want me to forgive, Minho said finally. Not for the chairman's sake, for mine. To stop carrying the guilt. I'm going to check on the catering setup in the back room. Give you two some privacy. How did you know? After we walked away from everything. About how he used to talk about the family he wanted someday. The children he'd raise differently. With love instead of violence. 200 people packed into the space, examining photographs, discussing composition, wiping away tears at the portraits of invisible Seoul. Critics took notes. Collectors placed red dots next to pieces they wanted to purchase. And ordinary people, migrant workers, elderly Koreans, the people Ada had photographed, stood in front of their own images with expressions of wonder. You made us visible, one elderly woman said to Ada in Korean. For the first time, someone saw us as beautiful instead of invisible. And 6 months ago, it gave me the courage to demand the life I deserved instead of settling for the life I was offered. Genuine, warm applause that filled the space. Afterward, a young woman approached Ada, Korean, maybe 25, with nervous energy and a camera bag over her shoulder. I'm Kim Jisoo, she said, photojournalism student at Hongik University. I've been following your work since the gala. The photos you released of Chairman Kang, they inspired me to pursue investigative photography, to create space for other witnesses. What do you want to photograph? She asked. Truth. Jisoo's voice was firm. Corruption, injustice, the things people want to keep hidden, like you did. Someone who understands that photography isn't just about beauty, it's about bearing witness. This is yours. I just provided the funding. He paused. Though I do have an announcement to make, if you're ready. What you might not know is why I walked away, so I'm going to tell you. I chose love over power, humanity over control, and in doing so, I got my life back, my real life, not the one my uncle engineered, but the one I actually want to live. Will you marry me again? For real this time. Because you choose me, not because you're surviving me. Yes, I'll marry you again. Every day for the rest of our lives, I choose you. And Ada was laughing and crying simultaneously, overwhelmed by the impossible beauty of this moment. 6 months ago, she'd been a photographer who witnessed a murder. Now she was a wife, a gallery owner, a mother-to-be, a woman who'd exposed corruption and survived, a witness who'd become a warrior. The transformation was complete. 3 months later, they held their second wedding, not in a judge's office at 2 a.m., but in a garden in Nami Island, surrounded by autumn leaves and friends and chosen family. Mama walked Ada down the aisle. Sung-ho stood as Minho's best man, and Judge Kim, retired now and free to speak honestly, officiated. I told you 6 months ago, he said to the assembled guests, that I had no idea if this marriage would be a love story or a disaster. Now I know. It's both, and that's what makes it real. Personal ones, written together over weeks of late-night conversations. I promise to see you, Ada said. Not the weapon you were trained to be, but the man you choose to be, every day, even when it's hard. Ada woke to contractions at 3 a.m. By 4 a.m., they were at Seoul National University Hospital, the same hospital where Mama had been treated, where Dr. Lee Sung-min had saved her life. Now he oversaw Ada's delivery, along with a team of nurses and specialists. Minho didn't leave her side once, held her hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement in Korean and English, reminded her to breathe when the pain made breathing impossible. At 6:47 a.m., as the sun rose over Seoul, their daughter was born. Perfect, tiny, screaming with the outrage of someone who'd been forced into the world too early. She has your temper, Minho said, tears streaming down his face. She has your lungs, Ada countered, exhausted and elated. The nurse placed the baby on Ada's chest, warm, wet, impossibly real. She had Minho's dark eyes and Ada's full lips and a shock of black hair that stuck up in all directions. What's her name? The nurse asked. Ada and Minho looked at each other. They'd discussed this, argued about it, finally agreed on something that honored both their ghosts. Ji-hoon, Ada said. We're calling her Ji-hoon Adaeze Kang. About the uncle who believed in humanity, even when the world tried to destroy it. Ada handed over Ji-hoon carefully, watched as Mama's face transformed with wonder. She's beautiful, Mama whispered. Perfect. Igbo Bia, my own child. Welcome to the world. We've handled worse. Ada sat in the nursery, nursing Ji-hoon while watching the Seoul skyline through the window. The baby was growing fast, already 6 months old, already trying to grab everything in reach, already displaying the personality Minho had predicted. Intense, stubborn, absolutely fearless. She's going to be trouble, Minho said from the doorway. She's already trouble. Ada adjusted Ji-hoon's position. Last week she grabbed my camera and wouldn't let go for 20 minutes. The chairman's cancer had progressed rapidly. He had maybe weeks left. How was it? That forgiveness isn't instant, it's a process. And that I'm working on it. For my sake, not his. Not even in memory. I need to edit photos for the gallery's new exhibition. The Witness Bride and the Reformed Killer. Proof that people can change if they want to badly enough. The boy who'd been trained as a weapon was now funding schools. Mama lived with them now, helping with Ji-hoon during the day while Ada worked. She and Minho had developed an unexpected friendship. Two survivors who understood each other's ghosts. And Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon was 18 months old, walking, talking, and getting into absolutely everything. She had Minho's intensity and Ada's fearlessness and an absolute refusal to accept no as an answer. They were sitting in the garden on a Saturday afternoon, Minho pushing Ji-hoon on a swing while Ada photographed them, when Sung-ho appeared at the gate. Boss, he said. Mrs. Kang, there's someone here to see you. Says it's important. This was the daughter, the one Minho had been paying for, the reason their entire story had started. I graduated from Yale last year, Yuna continued. Top of my class. I've been working in New York, But I came back to Korea because I needed to know the truth about what happened to my father. And I know you've been paying my expenses for almost 2 years, thinking I didn't know where the money came from. But what I want to understand is, why did you take care of me afterward? I read about your brother, about what happened. And I thought, my father and your brother both died because of family obligations, because of impossible choices. Maybe naming my son Jihoon is a way of honoring both of them, who turned something terrible into something bearable, determined to find light even in the darkest places. But you also saved my future. That's complicated, messy, human. Would you let me photograph you and your son for the gallery, for the redemption exhibition, a portrait of forgiveness, and between them, a portrait of the original Jihoon, digitally restored from an old family photo, his smile bright and full of hope. 3 Jihoons, the exhibition was called. 3 generations. 3 stories of sacrifice and redemption. It toured internationally, won awards, sparked conversations about justice, forgiveness, and the complicated ways people survive impossible circumstances. Ada's work was now shown in galleries across Asia, Europe, and North America. She'd published 2 books of photography. She'd given TED Talks about bearing witness. She'd become everything she'd dreamed of being when she first picked up a camera in Lagos. But her favorite moments were still the quiet ones, like now, sitting in their garden at sunset, watching Minho push 3-year-old Jihoon on the swing while Mama tended to her vegetables, and Sung-ho read the newspaper and pretended he wasn't still keeping watch. "Higher, Appa," Jihoon demanded in Korean. "I want to touch the sky." If someone had told her then, told the frightened photographer who'd just witnessed a murder, that she'd end up here, she never would have believed it. But here she was, married to the man who'd once held a gun to her future, mother to a daughter named after his murdered brother, living a life built on the foundation of violence that had been transformed into something beautiful. The witness bride had become a wife, a mother, an artist, a warrior, and she had no regrets. "What are you thinking about?" Minho asked, coming to sit beside her. "Everything." She leaned against him. "Nothing. How impossibly lucky we are." Minho scooped her up and she giggled. That perfect, innocent laughter of a child who'd never known violence, never known fear, never known anything but love. "Tell me the story again, Iyama," Jihoon said in her mix of Korean and English, "about how you and Appa met. Someday, when she was older, they'd tell her the real story. But for now, the simple version was enough. Once upon a time," Ada began, "there was a photographer who saw something she wasn't supposed to see, and instead of running away, she was brave enough to stay. And that bravery changed everything. Best decision I ever made. Her proof that even the darkest beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. The camera never lied. And this love, this peace, this impossible family, was the truest thing she'd ever witnessed. If this story made you believe in second chances, made you cry, made you think about the complicated ways we survive and love and heal, drop a comment and let me know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another Afro-Korean romance. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most dangerous love stories are the ones that save us. Take care of each other and keep choosing love over everything. Love you all. See you in the next one.